Hi Flosstube, I'm Annie and I am the Proper Stitcher and welcome to episode number 41. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please subscribe and ring the bell. You'll get notifications when I upload new videos. And if you're returning, thank you so much for coming back and for your continued support. This is a channel where I like to talk about cross stitch and quilting and hopefully give you inspiration to fully finish your pieces. What I have found with friends and with people that I have met along the way in my cross-stitching journey is a lot of people have a fear of finishing their pieces. So what I'm here to do is hopefully eliminate that fear. I always say I would rather have a finished project than a perfect project. And with each and every time you finish your own piece, it does get easier, it does get better, and you will become more relaxed and hopefully become more happy with your finished projects. So today is a special video. I am going to do a tutorial on how to attach Rickrack to your finished pieces. And what I have done is I've brought a couple of things out to show you that I have finished before and have attached Rickrack. And then I brought a pillow that I finished a few years ago that I am not happy with. So I'm going to perform a little bit of surgery on this pillow. This is a wordplay pillow by Brenda Gervais. And I finished this a few years ago when I first started teaching myself how to finish different projects. This is a piece I'm not happy with. I cut the fabric too close and I did not stuff the pillow. It's a little bland. So what I'm going to do is take the pillow apart, stuff it a little bit more, and then I am going to attach Rickrack to the pillow. This is a blue Rickrack that I think will look beautiful on this pillow because the dress and the gentleman's coat, they just have a beautiful shade of blue. And we all know I like an excuse to use blue. It is my favorite. But I think this will just make all of these colors pop. So I'm going to show you how to attach the Rickrack to this pillow. But before we do that, I want to show you a couple of pieces that I have attached Rickrack to. This is a piece I did last summer, and this is a blackbird piece. This is piece rose. And I attached Rickrack to this. This is an unusual Rickrack. This is more of a, it is a Rickrack, but it has some eyelets or just more of a lace look to it. And the way I attached this one is a method where you can then go in and scrunch up the edges to give it a little bit more dimension. So that is one way to attach Rickrack. The other is this is a piece. It's a freebie on Not Forgotten Farms website, and I stitched this years ago. And this is one that I went back and did surgery on. I took it apart, took the opening apart, stuffed it a little bit more, and then attached a green Rickrack to this. This is more of a flat finish Rickrack. So what I'm going to try to do is show you how to do both, attach it both ways. I think what I'll do is a portion of the pillow we'll do in this way, and I'll show you how to do that. And then a portion I'm going to try to do it this way. Hopefully that method will work on this Rickrack as well. So what you need to do for this video, the supplies you need to attach Rickrack, very easy. You'll need a pillow. You'll need your Rickrack. You'll need, in my case, I'm going to need a seam ripper because I am going to restuff this pillow before we attach the Rickrack. You're going to want some straight pins to help you hold the Rickrack in place, and some scissors, needle and thread to match the Rickrack. This is the closest shade of thread that I have for this Rickrack, and I think it'll do just fine. It's sort of a silvery blue. And some scissors. And that's really pretty much all you're going to need to attach the Rickrack to your stuffed pillow. So I'm going to pause right here, restuff my pillow, and come back, and we're going to attach the Rickrack to my pillow. So I am back, and I performed my surgery on my pillow. And I'm so glad that I did. I like the way it is stuffed a lot more this way. So what I did is I opened up the seam, stuffed it a little bit more, and I discovered some things that I just didn't realize. Again, you learn as you go, and what I would do now if I finished this pillow is I would have closed the seam at the bottom and not the top, but that's okay. So lots of other things I learned. I mean, like I said, I cut it very close to the edge. So some of this rickrack will cover the words. I could do a chenille trim around this and hide some of, or it wouldn't take up as much room, but I just really want to do the rickrack. So I have my rickrack ready to go. And what some people do is they measure and they figure out if they have enough, and they get very technical. I have a lot of this rickrack, so I know I have enough. I am not going to measure mine. What I do like to do though is I like to start at the bottom of the pillow so that when I go all the way around the pillow, I end at the bottom. Now, if we were making this into an ornament, I would do the opposite. I would start at the top and go around and do some sort of loop at the top. But I am doing this just as a finish for a dough bowl or on my shelf. So what I do is I find where I want the rickrack to start, and I place my first pin in the rickrack. And what I do is I place the pin into the seam so that I know that I am going to be attaching or stitching the rickrack into a straight line and on that seam. So I go through and I put in and I don't do all of the rickrack, but I just do a few inches of where I'm going to stitch, and I get started stitching that way. And when I get to the corner, I put in a pin in the corner so it holds it in place for me. So I only do a little bit at a time. And so what I'm going to do with this one first to show you is how to do the flat rickrack attachment. So I have my needle ready to go, and I just did a regular thread, and you're going to need to re-thread your needle. You're not going to be able to have enough thread for the entire pillow, so you will have to re-thread your needle about halfway through. So I have my needle ready, and so what I like to do is start from the back of the pillow. So I go in, and what I'm doing is I am going to, first I have to do a knot to get it sort of started. Now, one thing I need to let y'all know is I am not a professional finisher. I do not pretend to be a perfectionist. I do not pretend to be professional. I am just a cross stitcher who likes to finish her own pieces. And I am not one to tell you that what my way is the best way. I am just someone who figured out what works for me. And that's what I'm here to encourage y'all to do, is to just find a method that works for you and just go with it. So what I'm doing here is I am going to get this knotted in so that it stays in place. So I'm just doing a couple of loops to get this started. And what I'm going to now do is cut off this tail so you don't see it. There are other ways to do that, I am sure, but this is the way I do it. So I'm going to go back in right next to where I came out so you can't even see it. And then I am going to feed the needle under the fabric of the pillow and come back out of the other loop of the rickrack and pull it through. I already have an embellishment on here, so it might get caught on that. So and this will be covered. This little boo-boo here will be covered when I finish off. So I'm not worried about how that looks. So I went in the rickrack and through the pillow and back out on the other side where the loop is on the next part of the rickrack. And now I'm going to go in right next to it. I don't think I have the right needle. So we may have to switch needles here in a second. So I'm going in very close to where I came out with that thread. I'm going in very close to it, and then I'm going to do the same. I'm going through my rickrack, through the pillow and to the other side of the rickrack, and I'm going to pull that through. And so you can barely see, but what it does is it gives it a nice little indentation, so it looks like a little embellishment. So I went in the pillow, out on the opposite side. Now I'm going in right next to where I came out, through the pillow again, and out the other side. Yeah, I'm using the wrong needle. This isn't sharp enough, but that's okay. It's working. And so I am going to make my way all the way to the end of the pillow, doing the same thing. And then as I go through, I'm just taking out those straight pins. So you can see I went in right next to where I came out, going through the pillow to the opposite side to the next loop of the rickrack. Pull it through, and then in right next to it, just a little bitty pinch right next to it, through the pillow, and then out the other loop of the rickrack, the other side, and pulling it through. And then just keep repeating in that way. And we're going to do this all the way to the corner or the edge, the end of this row. And then I'm going to try to attach it the other way. And what I'm going to do is switch needles when I get there, because this is not working for me. And just pull it through. Very easy, very quick. And again, I'm just going in right next to where I came out. And then out the other side. And you can move this around until you get to it. There. And then in again, pull this pin out, and then all the way through. What I've done is I am using one of my cross stitch needles and not a sewing needle, and that's why I'm having difficulty. So I'm a little bit of a ding dong. So what I'm going to do when I pause the video is switch to another needle. But I want to keep showing you this. So again, in twice on one side. I'm going to go in right next to where I just came out, and then push it through the pillow all the way to the other side and pull it through. And then back in. Right next to where I came out, and then push it in to the other side. And now when I get here to the corner, I'm leaving that pin in place until I get this through. So I am going through where I came, next to where I came out. And then on this one, I like for my corner to be a little bit more secure. So I'm going to do this twice. I'm going to go through on this side. And then I'm going to go in next to where I came out. Again, I didn't use the right needle. So in through there, and then I'm going to go back out and just really want that corner to be in place. And then what I'm going to do now is attach the pins on this side so that it stays in place. So there's one, and then here's another. So let's do 2 more of those, and then we're going to try it another way. So let me grab my needle. Okay, so go back in next to where you came out. And then out through the next rim of the rickrack. In next to where you came out, and then out. And then out. Okay, So that is the start of this Rickrack attachment. So what I'm going to do now is pause the video, switch my needles, and we're going to try to attach it in this way, where I lift the edges, the scalloped edges a little bit. So give me 1 second. Okay, so let's do it another way. Let's try this time. Instead of going through the top, okay, let's think of the Rickrack like a wave. So instead of going on the top of the wave, let's go at the bottom of the wave. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow the rises of the Rickrack to stand up a little bit. So as you can see on this one, on this side, we stitched down the top of the wave. And in this case, what it's doing is it's covering my words. So I might end up pulling this part out and going with this method, but let's see what it looks like when I get this side done. So this is one way. So now we're gonna do this way. I have already pinned the top of my Rickrack onto the top of my pillow, and as you can see, I put the pins just about a 1/4 of an inch, maybe a 1/2 inch apart. And what I did is I pushed that pin into the seam of my pillow. Now remember, I made this pillow years ago, so things would be much different today if I redid this pillow. But I think this Rickrack is going to add just a little bit of what this pillow needs to bring it back to life. So what I'm going to do is I have pulled my thread through the dip of the Rickrack. Same as before, I'm going to go into the Rickrack close to where I came out. And because these pins are already in the center of the Rickrack, I'm going to use that as sort of a guide. So I'm going to go through my pillow and back out where that pin was. Then I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to go in close to where I came out and then go in through the pillow and back out through, sort of following the seam of the pillow, but I'm right down the middle of the Rickrack. So we're going to go in through there, out. Now I'm going back in close to where I came out, and then I'm going to go through the pillow and back up through the Rickrack. Just having the right needle makes a big difference. You do not want to use your cross-stitch needle for this. You want to use a sewing needle. So through the Rickrack and back out. And so what it's doing is it's attaching the Rickrack, but I can now go through and lift the Rickrack, the edges, to give it a little bit of dimension. So through the pillow and back out through the Rickrack. And you can even do a smaller little bite through the Rickrack if you want. But I'm going to do just a little further away. There. And then you can scrunch it up and see how that looks. So I'm going to go through and do this whole top of the Rickrack, and we're going to see how I like it. And if I like it, then I'm going to take out what we did and redo it, and we'll come back together. Okay, so in through the Rickrack where you came out, through the pillow, and back through the middle, the center of this Rickrack wave. So I'm going to go back through the Rickrack, through the pillow, and back out. And don't worry about scrunching up the pillow. I'm going to iron this when we're done and sort of give it a nice press. So through the Rickrack, through the pillow, back out through the Rickrack. In through, we're close to where I came out, and then back through. And like I said, I am not a professional finisher. I am not a seamstress. This is just something that works for me. You may have another technique that works for you, but this definitely is simple, it's quick, and I like the way it works. Okay, so there's that much of it. And this is how it looks on the back. So I'm going to keep on going to the corner, and then we'll finish. I will pause and we'll take a peek at how we want to finish this. Okay, so in through where I came out, through the pillow, and back out through the rickrack. And I am keeping right along that center of the rickrack in the middle of the waves. And then we're coming up to the corner, and we're going to just keep doing it the same way. So when I get to this edge here, I'm going to go in the same way, and I'm going to come out through the corner of the rickrack and lift. So now that I am here on the edge, I'm going to kind of push my pillow down and see which way I prefer. Do I prefer the scallops being a little raised where I can now see the words? See if you can see that. And then here's how the top looks, where you can scrunch it up in the back and give it a good look. And then here is the side where I kept the waves down and sewed them into the side of the pillow. And I think I like how it looks with the raised, the way I did this top. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have determined that, I'm going to do a few more stitches on this side to show you all. Then we're going to pause. I'm going to take this part out, and then I'm going to finish the whole pillow like the top. So give me 1 minute. Oh, no. Yeah, give me 1 second to get myself organized. All right, so let's do that. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this. I've moved it. There we go. Okay, so in through the corner, back where we came out, close to where we came out, and through the center. Keeping in the same fashion. And so I'm going to go through here and put some pins in, just because I like for it to stay in place. So in through the seam, and in through the seam here. Okay, so let's just do a few more stitches, and then I will pause and we will come back together when I have everything finished. So in through there, and then out. So one more time, in through where, close to where I came out, and then now I'm going through the pillow and back out through the rickrack, keeping it in that center of the rickrack. In and then out. And then in and then out. You can also do, you can sew your rickrack in between. When you sew your pillow together, you can sew your rickrack when you do your pillow right sides together. We will do a separate video on that, but I like doing the sewing, hand sewn method, just because for this type of pillow, this is just the way I like to do it. So let's do a quick pause. I'm going to finish up stitching and sewing on this rickrack and take this side apart, and we will be right back. And then I'll show you how I meet up the ends. Okay, so I have put the rickrack on all the way around with going through the center of the rickrack. So I am now back to finish off the end and show you how I do that. Now, what I've noticed is there is a smudge on my Rickrack right here, and I do not know what that is from. It's like a black smudge. So I am hoping that I can cut it off right there and just use because it meets, that black smudge is just past my starting point. So let's get this as close. What I want to do is get these pieces to line up as close as I can in the same seam line. So these two top of the waves match up. So that's what my goal is. I'm going to aim to get those two to match up so I can cut off at that Rickrack. So I can cut the end off right there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down here, this pin in to the seam. And I'm going to do the last one here, but I'm not going to cut just yet. I am going to wait and make sure that this is going to work. So I've got my needle in still. So I'm going in close to where I came out, through the pillow, back through the center of the Rickrack, and out through the other end of the Rickrack. And I'm going to pull through, and then I'm going to go back in close to where I came out, through the pillow, up through the Rickrack, and pull my needle through. And let's take a look. So now I have this tail. So I am going to now go through both of the pieces of the Rickrack. So I'm going in close to where I came out of the Rickrack. It's hard for me to see holding it this way. Okay, so I'm going in, and then I'm coming up through the other piece of the Rickrack. I'm trying really, really hard. There we go. So I'm going in through the two seams, the start and the finish, because I want to attach those two together. And it got just a little bit of that black smudge, but that's okay. It's on the bottom. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So I'm going back through the Rickrack, and I want to tie these off. So I'm going through the back of through the Rickrack, through the back of the pillow, and I'm pulling my needle through. And I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going back up through the pillow and into the Rickrack, and then back through the Rickrack and into the back of the pillow, and I'm hiding my needle behind the Rickrack, and I'm going to knot it back here. I'm going through some material, making a loop, and then I'm going to do a knot. I'm going to do that one more time, making two little bitty knots. Two little bitty knots. Hang on, my thread got twisted. So make sure that you're going through your both strings. So I'm pulling that through, and now I'm attached. So I am going to take my needle, feed it through the pillow. Since I've already made two knots, I'm going to feed it through the pillow and back, and I'm going to hide my thread, and I'm just going to cut it so I don't have a string. And I'm just going to cut it. And now I'm going to cut this piece of the Rickrack off. There, and I cut off as much as that black smudge as I could. And so now we have a pillow with Rickrack on it all the way around. So let me give it a good little press, and then we will recap how this pillow came together. And there's the back of my material. I forgot to show that to you. I am not sure what this is, but it's like a primitive material, and it has little blue and red hearts in it. just super cute. I think the Rickrack really helped this pillow revive it, since this was one of my first finishes. So let me iron it. We'll be back in just a minute. So that's it. That is how I revived this old finish of mine. This is a Brenda Gervais with Thy Needle and Thread wordplay, February wordplay. And I've always loved the design, and I was ambitious enough a few years ago to finish this into a pillow. Well, I made mistakes. It was one of my first finishes, but no matter what, I still put it out every year. Well, this year I decided that it needed a little bit reviving. So I took apart, ripped out the seam. The seam was at the top, where I sewed the top together, stuffed it a little bit more, made it a little fuller, which I'm so glad I did that. That made a big difference. The charm I already had on there. I attached a heart charm to it when I sewed it into a pillow. And then I decided to do Rickrack, add this blue Rickrack trim to the pillow. And I think it really has helped this look like a nice little finish. You could do a ribbon door and make this into a door hanger. So you can do a satin ribbon trim, like a ribbon hanger on it. And I do have some pretty blue ribbon. But I'm going to keep it like this for now. Who knows, maybe later I will decide to add that ribbon to it. But I am so glad I did this. I'm so glad that I revived it. If you have some pieces that you have finished in the past, but you're just not 100% crazy about it, you can do so much. You can take it apart. You can add an embellishment to it, add a trim to it, change a bow, whatever it is that you've done to it. Hopefully you can go back in and maybe revive it in some way. But I am here to show you that I am not a perfect finisher. I am not a professional finisher. I learn as I go, and I hope that I can pass that on to you, that you don't have to be perfect to finish your pieces. And as time goes on, you do get better with each finish. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial on how to attach Rickrack. So many different ways to attach your trims and your finishes, but this is just one of many ways. There are so many tutorials on YouTube that you can follow. So hopefully this gave you some ideas and a way to finish some of your pieces and add some trim. So thanks for stopping by, and until next time, I'm Annie and I am the Proper Stitcher. Thank you.